Hi everybody, it's Sally again. In this tutorial today I thought I would show you something that a lot of knitters find tricky, and that is how to shape a front round neck whilst you're pattern knitting. In this particular case I'm going to do a Fairisle example, but I will do a tuck stitch or a slip stitch one on a separate tutorial at some point, because I employ two different methods for dealing with the stitches in and out of hold for this different type of pattern knitting. So today this is just about Fairisle. So what I've done is I've got this little set-in sleeve pattern. It's Marion Nelson card, which is a very similar kind of schematic method to the one that I use these days, and I'm basically assuming that I'm knitting the front from the sleeve decreases upwards. So I've cast on and knitted a few rows and started a Fairisle pattern across the 84 stitches, which is what you get from this point upwards. And the pattern note says I need to be on row 38 to start the centre neck shaping, and at the minute I'm assuming that I'm going to be on row 34, which is what my row counter is showing just now. So I've got another 4 rows to go. When I knit pattern knitting on the silver reed, obviously the punch card is in place, it's released, it's rotating, the cam lever is set on F for Fairisle, and I have my second yarn thread loaded up on the front of the carriage. And I usually increase my tension by about 1 whole number to knit Fairisle to accommodate for the fact that you've got the extra thickness of yarns. The silver reed machines don't have the automatic end needle selection, so I put the end needle out to D position until I start holding for the neck, in which case you can't do that because obviously it will hold, so it has to come forward to C, but we'll cover that in a minute. So I've got another 4 rows to go until I get up to my row 38, and then we'll talk about how we do the neck shaping. So end needle forward, end needle forward, 2, forward, 3 and 4. So I've now reached row 38, which is the point at which on this pattern it says I have to shape my neck. Now the centre neck is -9 stitches, and that will be either side of naught, and then you're decreasing 1 stitch every row 9 times, which will be on both sides of the knitting, obviously to create a matching neck shape on both sides. So the first thing I need to do is to set my carriage to hold. The second and most important thing I need to do is I need to note the pattern row that is showing in the punch card reader, and it is showing row 15. And I had a pencil here a minute ago. Lost it again. Why do these things always go walk? It's the instant you want them. Right, here we go, there's another one. So I'm going to make a note down on my card that my pattern, my punch card is showing 15 in the pattern reader, because I will need that number when I come back to do the left hand side. So firstly I'm going to knit the right hand side of the shaping, so I'm going to put everything to the centre of naught out to hold, to the left of naught out to hold. That is now all in hold position, and then the first 9 stitches for the centre of the neck, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. That is now ready to start the shaping round the centre. As I said a minute or two ago, you cannot now put the end needle out to D position to capture the Fairisle float, so it has to go to C. If you do that, it will knit back and capture both yarns. And the most important thing also to remember when you're pattern knitting on the silver reed with the drum patterning mechanism is that both of those drums must pass that patterning selector on every part of the carriage, otherwise it will not read the patterning correctly. Now this is only a small piece, but when you're knitting a bigger garment and you're working out here, or sometimes even out here, it's very easy to forget to take the carriage past the pattern reader fully on every pass of it. So, first row. Right, I've gone right past the pattern reader. Now I need to put one into hold every row 9 times. So that's the first one. The second one. And again, this end needle out to C. I don't have to do it on this side because I'm holding them for the neck anyway. Third one. Fourth one. End needle out to C. I'm going to move this weight up and also put a bit of extra weight on the inside of this neck curve. See. Neck curve, and that is the last one. So that is the neck shaping complete for the right hand side. So what I now need to do is to continue knitting until my row count says 64, which is the number on here, which is the point in time at which I do the shoulder sloping. Now I did another video earlier today talking about shoulder sloping, and I'll show you again how I do it on here, because when I work Fairisle, I do not continue the Fairisle pattern through the shoulder slope. And this is obviously a front neck as well, which I didn't do on the other video. The other video was a back neck, so I just now need to continue knitting straight until I get up to row count 64. I'm on 48 at the minute. Keep the knitting well weighted on the edges. And pull that out to C. And because I'm no longer putting the neck stitches into hold, this one now needs to come out to C. And periodically move these weights up to make sure that the stitches are knitting off well. So that's 54. 10 rows to go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's weights up again. 7, 8, 9, 10. So that is now up to row 64, and I've done the right hand side. This is the point in time at which I now want to begin the shoulder sloping. So I just noticed it's dropped a stitch very inconveniently. I'm just going to sneak that up. It's not really properly taking it into account, but whoops, it'll do. Purpose of this. So, sorry, where was I? I was talking about starting the shoulder slope. So I've just noticed it's not knitted that stitch back properly either. Pull that one back. That's better. Or that one. There we go. Right. Yes, for the shoulder sloping, I do not knit in pattern. So I am going to take away my yarn 2, which is the blue. I'm going to lock my card momentarily and reset this back to Fairisle and back to my to stocking stitch and back to stocking stitch tension, so take it down one whole number. And now I'm going to start the shoulder shaping, which is to decrease 6 on alternate rows 4 times. Now I cannot do this on the carriage side, so I have to knit 1 row across. And so my first set of 6 stitches will be 5, because I'm going to do the automatic wrap. 2, 4, 5. It's the 6th one. Back. 2, 4, 5. 6th one. Back. 2, 4, 5. 2, 4, 5. Back. And now I need to knit all those back with 1 row of stocking stitch before I remove on waste yarn. That'll be putting all of those back to C position. And so there is my sloped shoulder done in plain stocking stitch, ready to remove on waste yarn, which I'll have to use the blue, so I'm going to think, oh no, I've got red. Let's thread this up. So I can break my main yarn, thread up with waste, and knit a few rows to remove. Take the weight off and knit across. That's it. It's knitted off there. Push those needles out of work. They're no longer required. So now we have got to set up the machine to knit the pattern back for the left hand side of the neck. Now the minute your needles are all out in hold and your machine is set to not knit needles in hold, so you can push that carriage to and fro as many times as you like without the needles falling off. So my pattern row is on row 15, and it doesn't actually matter whether you start this knitting now from the right hand side or the left hand side. I find it convenient to start from the left and just reverse everything I did for the right hand side. So I'm going to rotate the card back round now to show row 15, which is where it was, and lock it. And now I've got to have my side levers back on the triangle, and I need to move both drums past the carriage at least once to read that pattern in. In this case, because I need to go back to the left, I'm going to do it twice, but once is sufficient. So now the correct pattern to resume at the right place is read into the drums on the patterning mechanism of the machine. Now I need to release the card, set the carriage up to Fairisle, change my tension back up again to 8, and rethread with main yarn in feeder 1 and contrast in feeder 2. Contrast in feeder 2. So we're ready to go. But before I start, I've got to get the needles on the left hand side back in the right place. I'll just put a peg on those yarns to hold them there for a minute. I sort that out. Now, unlike with stocking stitch, you cannot just push these back to C position and start knitting, because if you do that, it will not pattern on that first row. You have to put your left hand side stitches back using a transfer tool and put them back into B. I have to put them all back apart from the first 9 that are the first set of stitches for the centre neck shaping. Ooh. There is 0, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stitches out in hold position. So are ready to start. This is the point in time at which you also reset your row counter back to, what was it, 38. And you have to remember, as I said earlier, that when you're knitting on this side of the garment, to make sure the drums pass that pattern reader on both passes of the carriage. And on this particular machine, because the row counter is over here, I need to make sure that I trip my row counter as well. So I'll be going quite a long way over before I turn around and come back again. Don't just go to here, stop and go back just because you've passed the end of the knitting. You have to stop and think about that, right? Yawns. Hold those down underneath and just double check everything is in the right place, and away we go. I also got to maintain my decreasing at the centre of the neck, so that's 1 stitch out to hold, and then the 2nd stitch out to hold, and then this one comes out to C, 3rd stitch out to hold, 4th stitch out to hold, this one out to C, 5th stitch out to hold. I need a weight on this hand side, and another one here. To see, out to hold. And the 9th. So that is now all of the neck shaping put out to hold position. Ooh, let's move that weight over to there. And I've got to continue up again until I get up to row count 64, making sure I maintain the patterning as I go. Put this one out to C, and now this one comes out to C. Keep moving these weights up. To make sure that that's knitting, those needles knit off cleanly. Oops. Force of habit. Into D. 62, 63, 64. So that's it. That side of the shaping is done. And now I'm going to do the shoulder slope from this side again. But once again, I'm going to go back to doing stocking stitch. So take out colour 2. Lock the card, return to stocking stitch and stocking stitch tension, and again I cannot start on the carriage side, so I need to knit at least 1 row before I start doing my shaping. 2, 4, 5, automatic wrap the 6th one, 2, 4, 5, automatic wrap the 6th one, 2, 4, 5, automatic wrap, 2, 4, 5, automatic wrap, and that's the last one. And then again I need to push these back to C position to have one row knitted back, and then take off on waste yarn. There, that one, last one. And that's it. You can see there more clearly once I change to stocking stitch, and not Fairisle how it's shaped the slope. Remove this on waste yarn. Caught there. Be a bit more careful. And then push those needles back out of work. So what you're left with now is your centre neck stitches and the start of the shaping that are left on the needles that are in holding position. Now the last thing I do before I take this off the machine is I also pick up the neck stitches that come up the side of the neck here, because it's easier to do now than later. And I will normally calculate how many it is by checking how many rows I've knitted between there and there, and then work out how many stitches I need. But on this case I will just guess it, and all I do is pick these stitches up, put them onto empty needles, critical point being down here where you're coming off that curve. You want to make sure you don't get a hole, so ensure you pick up 2 threads from that stitch at that point there where you've come around the corner, as it were. On this one I've gone up to 36, so I make sure I have the matching number on this side. And doing this then enables you to get that nice neat line around the neck. If you follow my neck method of knitting a double depth neckband, turn it to the outside and back stitching in place. So all I need to do now is to knit one row using the main colour, or perhaps it might be the contrast colour if you're going to knit your neck in a contrast colour. This through here, make sure the carriage is set to knit back from hold as they're all out in hold, and knit one row. Then take off on waste yarn, because I will put those back later once I've joined one of the shoulders, because it needs to be turned and rehung on the machine the other way around. I'm going to take this off. And this can now be removed. Hopefully it will demonstrate that I picked up the pattern correctly on the left hand side of the neck. And there it is. So there's your pattern coming up to the front neck shaping, and this was the one that was on that side. As you can see, it has resumed it in the correct place and position. Obviously this side is correct because we didn't stop and restart on that side of the knitting as it was reversed on the machine. I know a lot of people are tempted to take Fairisle knitting off the machine once they get up to the next shaping and not to put it into hold. The problem with that is, as you'll notice on your machine, if you have one the same as mine, is you've got these blocks of red, blank, red and blank, and that is where your 24 stitch pattern repeat is situated. And so if you've got your neck over here on these needles over here, your right or left side of the neck over here, if you don't get them back on exactly the same position of needles with regard to the patterning, when you resume the patterning, it will be offset against where you had it originally. So it is much better, if you're going to shape a neck in pattern, to leave the left hand side of the stitches on the machine in hold, and then knit the right and come back and then knit the left. But you just have to sit and step through the process logically, and make sure that you reset your card in the right place, read the pattern in, and then knit it away. But it is not that tricky. I hope this video has been some help to you. The process is very similar to if you're knitting in tuck or slip. It's just that I don't put the stitches into hold when I do that. I take them back on a ravel cord, but I will show that on a separate video. Thank you, everybody.